Check another win off for Ohio State and check every box along the way. Offense, defense, even special teams. Zach making a play for the Buckeyes as they cruise past Purdue 45-0 on Saturday. This is the Boren Blitz. It's the podcast daily on a Monday. Zach, Purdue's not great. I think we can start there. But Ohio State still went out there and did exactly what it had to do.
They did exactly what they had to do. And actually, I would give this team a lot more credit than probably people are giving them credit for, because I talked leading up to this past week how hard a game like this past Saturday is when you have a conference opponent who's at the very bottom of the standings in late October, early November, noon kick, coming off a massive road victory. You knew the fans on their calendars have Indiana and Michigan circled, so you knew they would be amped up for those games, so there wouldn't be that great of a turnout. And guess what? This team still showed up, right? When the energy wasn't there in the stadium of a normal Ohio State or big Ohio State football game, this team put their head down, grinded through this victory. And I say grinded because they created their own juice. They manufactured plays. And come on, it's a shutout. Division I college football, I don't care who it is. We talk about it all the time, how hard a shutout is. For this team, 45-0. They executed very well, in my opinion, a lot better than they did against Penn State. Cleaned up a lot of things. I don't think there could be any issues that this coaching staff is talking about on Sunday in the Woody after watching that game. And now, to your point, you turn the page, you got Northwestern this week coming up, and then two massive games to end the year.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes we get in to a Boren Blitz and we're nitpicking things and trying to project it forward. Well, what does this mean in a playoff game, in a talent equated game? I agree with you. I don't think that there's much in there that would cause stress, and that's a good place to be. And for a coaching staff, they probably might get a little nervous about that, because it's like, all right, well, how do we get them locked back in and ready to go for Northwestern? Again, another team at the bottom of the standings. It's going to be a weird trip, playing in the baseball stadium. We'll talk about that in the week ahead. But, I know that the coaches will find something to be more critical of than maybe we are right now. They tried a bunch of different personnel groups and some different schematic stuff, Zach, that some were more encouraging than others. That's probably where they'll start, because we did see the jack position on Saturday, and it also came during the roughest stretch for the defense.
Yeah. So to the coaching point, you're right. It's, after a Penn State, a huge top 5 victory on the road where you win, but you don't execute properly, that's where the coaching staff wants to pat the guys on the back and say, great job. I am sure they were hoping Saturday didn't go as smooth, because when you play a conference opponent who you are way more superior than, that's when the hard coaching happens, right? So they want to find some times to be hard on guys. So guess what? Those guys aren't sitting there and reading their press clippings and everything else. So any great coaching staff, and I know you are a hit on it, that Ryan and that coaching staff is going to find things to hammer home, so to speak, so guys aren't getting complacent. Again, back to the different personnel. I loved what they did. We've been looking for this to happen throughout the year, right? Them be able to do some different things. They finally did it. To your point, when they did jump into some of these different personnel packages, there were some missed tackles. It looked like maybe some missed assignments. So there's going to be some hard coaching with that, because I can guarantee you, as time goes on, especially playing a team hopefully like Oregon again, that wants to spread you out, wants to stress you, they need to jump into some different sets. As we saw, that 4 down, just playing defense didn't always work against Oregon when they played them the first time.
Yeah, you look overall, as you mentioned, it's a shutout. Those are hard to come by. Jack Sawyer scores the first touchdown of his career, scooping up the fumble that JT Tuimoloau forced. Lathan Ransom gets an interception. There's a lot of moments in there that you pick out and say, well, that's really strong stuff from Ohio State. That's what you expected the Silver Bullets to do. They haven't given up an offensive touchdown now since the late in the Nebraska game. Like, everything is trending in the right direction for them. And we'll see what that means once they get to Indiana, Michigan, potentially Oregon again. But this notion, this concept of re-engineering and it's Ryan Day's term for it last week, and maybe letting Jim Knowles do more of the things that he did at Oklahoma State in midseason is kind of like it's wild to watch play out to me, Zach. I don't know what it's like for you with a much greater grasp of the X's and O's, because sometimes they'll say, oh, well, it's not like we've completely changed the defense, but sometimes it looks like they have.
Yeah, but here's the thing. When it comes to the basic fundamentals of defense and what you're playing, you're not changing much, right? You just have a different look, but you're playing the same coverages. You're able to call the same blitzes. You're able to do some of these different things. And all you have to, and the only thing that dictates where you're blitzing from, or where, what side's playing certain coverage if you're splitting the field, is all based off of one call when the offense comes out and gives it to you. So it's the same thing as, a quarterback making a check for certain wide receivers, or a check on the run play when they see what defense they have in front of them. It's the same thing with the defense, right? Middle linebacker, safeties, whoever it is, and however they're communicating, they're able to give some different looks while then be able to call a defense looking at the strength, looking at what they're giving them. So it's not like they're going out there and doing a completely different install for a defense and revamping the entire thing, right? So I think some people see, they're going to see that 3 down on Saturday against Purdue and be like, oh my God, it's a completely new defense. No, the fundamentals of the defense are still the same. You're just giving the offense a different look. And this is something that I think Ryan has really wanted to get involved in, because Ryan being an offensive guy, it's how can you stress a defense? And that's by giving them different looks at all times. Well, as a defense, how do you dictate kind of that same mindset to an offense, and to be able to give them different looks while also running your main stuff, right? So they don't know where pressures are coming from. They don't always know, especially if they're on a run play. Offensive linemen don't know who they're doubling to and working up to. When 4 down Mike linebacker, like if that's what they're doing all week, it's easy to say, hey, listen, okay, we're identifying him and going to him. When you start giving them different looks, it creates the offense start thinking. It creates misassignments by the offense. And I think that's what Jim Knowles, Ryan Day, and this defense is trying to create.
I appreciated the fact that, because you could see them toying with the different looks and the different personnel, and that helped because they were able to keep Tyleik Williams on the sideline. They were, able to get some breaks for Cody Simon, Sonny Styles at times. Jermaine Matthews was getting in there at corner. Like, sometimes we've talked about Ohio State and like the need to develop depth and play younger guys and get them experience, and they wait until the game is well out of hand. It's a 5-possession game. That seems to be the mark where Ryan Day's like, okay, we can take people out and get comfortable. I thought on Saturday this was the first opportunity, like, well, eventually Ohio State's going to pull away from Purdue. Why not do this immediately? Edric Houston starts. If you had looked at that list, you'd say, well, that's not normally the Ohio State approach. They would have drawn somebody else who might have a little bit more experience than a true freshman. I think they were willing to take a small gamble that the margin of victory might be smaller in order to accomplish some things that are more valuable in the long term. And that's not something that the Ryan Day era has always included. I thought that was a notable change on Saturday, and one that was pretty refreshing to watch.
Austin, you say that, and you say margin of victory, but it was 45-0.
I know. Well, I thought they could have. I thought they could have beat them by 100. Like the part.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. I guess to my point is, it's great to see the changing of the guard, so to speak, or just the mindset of the coaching staff. To your point, normally not always putting a true freshman in to start in a game like this, or I think Jermaine Matthews was out there on the second series. I know the completely different personnel change and run into kind of that Jim Knowles defense occurred on the second series of the game. So many of these things happened earlier in the game. And I think that's a great sign that they were still able to shut them out, that they still were able, to beat them by 45. Because now it just creates confidence for Ryan and his coaching staff, knowing that, hey, listen, maybe we can change the way we think about things. Maybe we can get guys in the game early. And guess what? It goes back to the conversation you and I had 2 weeks ago on this very show of there is a certain standard that is now being recognized at Ohio State, and you have to meet that standard. So it doesn't matter if you are a true freshman. Doesn't matter if you're a second or third string player. Doesn't matter if you're a fifth-year starter, right? There is a standard that you need upheld. There's a standard that you need to play to. And what I love is that Ryan and this coaching staff, no matter of age, no matter whatever, you need to meet that standard. So guess what? We are going to put you in the game early. We are going to let you go out there and get your feet wet, in a 0-0 ball game, expecting you to go out and dominate and have the I want to call it stress, but that thought process of, hey, listen, it's a tie ball game. I'm not going in when it's 35-0 and there's no real stress on me. Like, I need to go out and make plays. And so I love to see that with this coaching staff. I love that they are asking young guys to answer the call, and that's what's happening.
There's a young guy who has been answering the call all year on offense, Zach, and I think Jeremiah Smith is pretty darn good at football. He's breaking every record there is, and Ohio State was intent on letting him do his thing. 7 targets in the first half, 6 catches, had the touchdown. And then they're like, well, now you can kind of cool it. It was like he's getting that star treatment as well. It's like, you've done enough. You can chill out for the second half. And he's just doing things every time out there that I've never seen before.
I mean, he's so good. So good. I don't even know. I don't even know if people truly realize how good he is. And the reason why I say that is because Ohio State fans have been spoiled for the past however many years with, Olave and Garrett Wilson, Michael Thomas, even Devin Smith, right? The list goes on. And then, Marvin Harrison Jr. Like, it's wild to think of the players that have come through here. And the guys that I just named, some of those guys would be like, literally, for a college standpoint, the greatest ever at their position when they came through. And so now you've got a guy that might one up all of them. And I don't think people realize like how special that player is. And I think everyone's just looking at him like, oh, well, we're used to Marvin. Okay, he's putting up Marvin numbers. That doesn't happen with a true freshman. Like that's the possibility of what he can do throughout his college career. Quite honestly, it's scary.
Right.
And I think the Ohio State coaches know that. I think there is a balance of keeping him grounded, kind of keeping a bubble around him. And I say that because now in the NIL world, we know how crazy the college football landscape can be with players and access to agents and all of these things. And so there's a balancing act. But I think Ohio State fans need to realize what they're watching, what they're witnessing. Don't take anything for granted and cherish every single game that you get to see this dude perform.
Yeah, it was pretty wild to hear him talk after practice on Wednesday, Zach. And he was asked if he had met, his expectations for this year so far. And he was like, not really. And he meant it. And he wasn't being, I don't know, arrogant about it. He has skills that are incredibly rare. We throw around that unicorn or generational prospect stuff a lot. This is true, and you're seeing it play out in real time. But then you saw an example of what that really means for him with another performance. There's still a lot of football left in year one. When you talk about scary for the future, like a week ago, there was the Penn State learning opportunity, not finishing the route. The ball came his way, doesn't quite make that touchdown catch. I think back to week one, a false start or a penalty early on, like a drop, let him play through it because he doesn't seem to ever make the same mistake twice. So like, what's that going to look like once he actually becomes a veteran wide receiver?
Yeah, I mean, there's still so much more growth for him. But what I love is that he is managing the attention, managing the stardom the correct way. It all goes back to, well, I can still be better. Well, I still need to keep working towards this. Like, he's never satisfied, which is what that's that attribute that great players have. And he's going to continue to get pushed. And it's on the Ohio State coaches to keep pushing him. And I know, Ryan, B. Hart, all those guys are pushing him to continue to get better. But I mean, Austin, you would know that. Have we ever had a 2,000-yard receiver in a season at Ohio State? I don't know if that's ever happened, right?
No.
I mean, it very well could happen. right? I mean, with this guy and what he's able to do in the years to follow, like he's special, man. He is
Yep.
very, very special.
Yeah, I figured he might be in the 3 and out for the Boren Blitz, but I had to talk about how special he was. If you had to find anything on Saturday, you're Ryan Day, you're the coaching staff, you're looking at, you can go back to the defense if you want, but if you're trying to do some of that nitpicking that championship teams do, was there anything you saw against Purdue that's like, well, that it's not maybe a problem, but they're probably going to address that for Northwestern on Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you want to nitpick on the defense side, you have to nitpick some of the missed tackles, right? There were a couple early on in the game that you just have to make, especially knowing that, hey, you're building against Indiana, against Michigan, possibly against Oregon again. Like, you can't have that. A lot of those missed tackles that we saw or kind of bad angles, like you saw it by CJ Hicks on one of his blitzes and early on in the game when he was lined up on the edge. A lot of those things are what you see like week 1, week 2 of the season, right? Because bullets are flying. You're not used to meeting a running back full steam in the hole, but you kind of saw it on Saturday. So that's something where they're going to go back to technique tackling. It always comes back to technique, but that's just me nitpicking like crazy. On the offensive side, I know Travion had a great game. I think maybe you could nitpick that when they were trying to run inside the tackles with Quinchon a little bit more, they weren't pushing guys off the ball as much as they were, say, against Penn State. Now, I'm not bringing, saying it was bad performance by any means. Just you want us to nitpick. Like that's where the coaches might nitpick and say, hey, listen, we should have rushed for, 250 yards against Purdue, right?
Yeah.
So that's where you can continue motivating guys. Now, did they run the ball great, or did they run the ball up to a standard? Yes. Could they have been better? Yes. But that's where they're going to push and keep on motivating those guys. And now you go against Northwestern, you're going to have to continue to run the football again, especially it's an 11 a.m. kick in Chicago, man. That is early. The air is going to be crisp. It's going to be windy. Like, hey, we need to come out and run the football and set the tone early. So those guys are going to be on that. But I don't know really where else you can look at stuff. I mean, obviously, Edric Houston with the penalty, but, there weren't that many penalties throughout the day. So there's really nothing that you can really hammer home with the team. You just have to be creative in nitpicking certain things to be able to push the message that, hey, we have to continue to get better.
Right. Yep. Just a few opportunities left to do that. And Northwestern is in the way. You got that potential distraction of looking ahead to Indiana and what's going to be a massive showdown. The Hoosiers handled Michigan, or they got past Michigan, I should say, to stay undefeated. They've got an off week to prepare for that one. That's going to be a big noon special in the Horseshoe when those teams get together. Little top 10.
Can we touch on that real quick?
Yeah, go for it.
These big noons, it's insane. It
every single week.
It is absolutely insane that every single week is a big noon kickoff. And I would argue that, not argue, I have an opinion that I think the coaches like it, and deservedly so, because they grind their butts off every single week and they work super long hours. So that noon game gives them a little bit of freedom to hang out with their families after a Saturday, right? If it's a 3:30 game, they're not getting home till 9 o'clock. At least a noon game, they get home around the dinner hour. They're able to hang out, relax. So I get it. But for the atmosphere, for the players, for recruiting, like the list goes on and on and on about it's so hard to fly in and make a noon game if you're a recruit, especially if you're playing on Friday night. You know, as a fan, guess what? When you get down there, and not everyone wants to show up and tailgate at 7 a.m. You know what I'm saying? Like, to be able to take in the atmosphere and get everyone amped up, like that takes time. You have to you have to grease them a little bit, right? Grease them up. I'm trying to take a Bobby Carpenter slang.
Yeah,
there,
sure.
right? So I understand the TV contract. I understand Fox's play on, ABC, ESPN, like that whole network pushes their big games to, 3:30 and 7:30, 8 o'clock. I get it. But you also have to realize that a big game will go toe-to-toe with any other big game in the country. So now essentially you're bowing out to ABC and ESPN, giving them the night slot and saying, hey, listen, our big game, we don't want to go toe-to-toe with you. You're winning that battle. We'll give you the night games and let everyone watch that. Just watch our noon game while everyone's tailgating around the country and having fun, right? And at some point that has to change. It has to. Noon games let's play Akron at noon. Let's play Western Michigan at noon. I get it. Let's play Purdue at noon. 100%. I get it.
Yeah.
A game like Indiana, I even argue a game against Michigan should be 3:30 every Saturday, the Saturday after Thanksgiving. Every year, 3:30. That should be the Ohio State-Michigan game. But,
I think you're going to have a lot of supporters on this platform that you're running on, Zach, because that's I think even Gus and Joel are tired of calling Ohio State games, to be honest with you. That was I wasn't watching it. Yeah, I wasn't watching it in the press box, but certainly saw some of it later on. And that's a play-by-play guy who's supposed to be known for his juice, who was as monotone as I can recall. Maybe that won't be the case for the Indiana game in a couple of weeks, but we'll see.
Well, do you want what they should do? And I've got zero knowledge of this, but I know before the season, SEC and Big Ten are starting to get in cahoots with one another, right? Like they're starting to come together and say, hey, we are the two leading conferences in college football. Let's come together, and we know that's happening. In my opinion, what should happen is you take the ESPN money, you take the Fox money, you take the CBS money, you take the NBC money, right? All four of those. Combine them together for the SEC and the Big Ten. Think about how large that contract is. You think about the NFL, right? NFL is Fox, CBS, NBC, all of them, right? Well, you combine those just between the SEC and Big Ten, those TV contracts. And then guess what? You have a draft. And it can be a game can be ABC, Fox, like those networks get together at the beginning of the year and draft SEC and Big Ten games, and it doesn't matter. I think Josh Pate was talking about this at some point, saying he would get rid of TV contract allegiances. Well, if you have two, I'm not going to call them super conferences, but if you've got the two best conferences in college football with the SEC and the Big Ten, let those networks position those games in a way that they want to position them to get them in marquee time slots so they're not competing against one another, right? I mean, you're telling me ESPN wouldn't want Ohio State?
Everyone wants Ohio State.
Everyone wants Ohio State.
That's how they've wound up in this situation, because it's purely Fox's business model that they wanted to play at noon. So they own the rights to Ohio State games.
You're telling me ESPN wouldn't want to put Ohio State, Michigan on ABC at 3:30?
They sure would.
Oh my God. Right. So, and you're telling me Fox wouldn't want to get their hands on, Georgia, Alabama, Georgia, Texas? They would be all over it.
Yeah. Well, if you and I were making the rules, we could make that happen. But I don't know if Tony Petitti or Greg Sankey are going to follow suit. Maybe they will. There has been more collaboration going on with these conferences, but that tells you how quickly we're trying to move on from the Purdue game, that we're just talking about kickoff times, because there's another early one on Saturday in Wrigley Field. Let's wrap up Purdue, though, with a 3-and-out, Zach.
Well, Austin, last week you told me, hey, is this going to be a team award? And I said, no, not against Penn State. Against Purdue, we're doing a team award.
Team award, all right.
The reason why I say that is because guess what? For this team, I already touched on it. For this team to be able to come together, noon game, atmosphere dead, lackluster opponent, and come in and take care of business, shut out, efficient on offense, scoring 45 points, 45-0. Special teams, like we didn't even touch on that. You mentioned it, but Caden Curry getting a blocked punt, like awesome to see, set the tone early on in the game. Team award, man.
Team award.
I don't think if there's anyone talking negative about this past week's performance, they don't understand football. They've never been in a locker room when you're running out at 11:45 trying to get juiced up to play Purdue at noon on November or whatever the date was, November 9th, right? Late in the season when Purdue's 1-8 or whatever the hell they were. Like,
Yeah.
people don't understand it. It's tough.
All right. It's a big win. As we said, it checked every box, and Ohio State moves one step closer. They are still in control of their fate and destiny in the Big Ten championship race. Getting down to it, last 3 weeks, they're moving on to Northwestern Wrigley Field Saturday, 11 a.m. Central Time. And then we'll be back here next Monday with Zach Boren for Boren Blitz to talk about it. Always great to get his insight. Thanks for the time. He's Zach Boren. I'm Austin Ward. We'll talk to you later.